You will not be able to believe the things we're going to hear listening into this meeting at the Department of Government Efficiency with Elon Musk, a bunch of gigantic brains, and Jesse Waters of Fox. I mean, really. Things we're about to hear are so absurd and outrageous. If this were a film, people would say it was too unbelievable. Yet this is reality. Grab your popcorn.
Say, what do we get done this week?
Want to go this way?
Sure. No, we start with you.
Sure. So actually, a lot of great work at the Treasury this week. One of the crazy things with regards to the Treasury is that when a payment is made, and the computers at the Treasury actually pay about $5 trillion per year, like crazy amounts, there was formerly not a budget code on there. So if a payment was made, you didn't know actually what it was for. It could have been for anything.
Yeah.
There was a $4 billion COVID fund in the Department of Education, and there was no receipts required, so people could just draw down on it. And when people looked into it, this wasn't us, this was before us, they found that money was being used to rent out Caesar's Palace for parties, rent out stadiums, et cetera. And so the one change that DOGE made with the Department of Education is we had the simple requirement that if you draw down money, you must first upload a receipt. That was the only change that was made. You must upload your receipt. And upon doing so,
yes,
nobody drew down any money anymore.
So we're just one point into this discussion. And if you were listening, your jaw has to be on the floor. $5 trillion of annual payments. And prior to the Department of Government Efficiency, no accountability. Mountains of money available to anyone to just dip into without even needing to provide a receipt to confirm the expense. How in the flying fuck did this happen? Unless, of course, it was by design. In other words, to enable a huge amount of fraud, grift, waste, abuse, and so on. Of course, that's not the case. That would never happen. Most interesting of all, however, suddenly, now that there's a requirement to provide a receipt before drawing down funds, no more funds being drawn down. It's almost like those funds previous to now were being taken, not necessarily for legitimate reasons, but because people knew they could get away with it. Of course, I'm just kidding. That would never happen. There's no fraud, there's no waste, there's no abuse. The whole Department of Government Efficiency is just a total waste of time.
Yes, but we didn't say that we'd check the receipt. You could send a fake receipt. You could send a picture of your dog. Anything. And but as soon as we asked for anything at all, suddenly the requests were like, oh, we don't need it anymore. That's interesting.
They were renting Caesar's Palace.
Yes, they were like basically partying on the taxpayer money.
Stadiums.
Yes.
Leasing stadiums. For what?
For parties, basically.
For parties.
Yes.
That's a big party.
It's a big party.
You'd think if you were stealing, you'd start small.
They do start small.
Yeah, now, full confession, I haven't actually seen this full interview, but I've seen a couple of segments of clips and some captions, so I knew what we're in for. But I think I know where this is going. I'm sure they did start small and noticed they could get away with it. So they incrementally increased the level of fraud. I mean, totally not fraud, there's none of that here. But start small. Oh, I got away with that. Okay, let's push it a bit further. Oh, I got away with that too. That's weird, but I'm going to keep pushing it. Oh, got away with that too. Okay, well, and eventually you end up to the point where they're literally renting stadiums and entire venues to party. And of course, the only reason you would party is so that the people who you've invited to a party on us remember that, and they can pay it forward at some future date to you, knowing that you looked after them. Now it's their turn to look after you, also known as bribery and corruption. Of course, I'm just kidding. That would never happen. Why do I even say that?
But then what happens is over the years, so generally the fraud starts out small and they try to hide it. But then year after year, if nobody stops the fraud, it gets more and more brazen. And every year it gets bigger until they're literally renting out stadiums. What's
$1 million to rent out a stadium?
Fraud in flagrante delicto, okay? We're talking at scale.
This is driving me crazy.
Oh, yeah.
When you find these things, do you guys get mad? You're like, yes, I got one. How does it make you feel?
It's so common.
It's so common.
You're like used to it.
I mean, you just
get so numb to it.
Unfortunately, you get, like the 100th time you've heard it, it's hard not to get a little numb.
Yeah.
You know, but and by the 200th time, you're like, well, okay, it's just another day at the office.
We checked, is the Small Business Administration giving loans to dead people over the age of 120? The answer was yes, and it was around $330 million.
Did we just hear that over $300 million of loans were provided to verifiably deceased people? I think that's what we heard, but that's so unbelievable. Surely that's not actually what we heard, right? That'd be insane.
Total. So
People with a birthday that could not possibly be real.
Yeah.
Meaning they're over 100. They're 115 years old or older. The oldest living American is 114. So it's safe to say if anybody is in the system as 115 years or older, that is fake.
So just by sharing a database and looking at social security numbers that showed that at the time of the loan, they had listed as over 115 years old, or actually under 11. We didn't even check for under 18.
Babies and dead
Under 11 years old. That's pretty clear.
Babies
right?
and dead people were getting loans.
That was $660 million.
So 2/3 of $1 billion with a B $1 billion went to people who obviously either were dead or far too young to possibly legitimately have a cause to apply for a business loan. How in the flying fuck was there no mechanism to cross-reference the age of people against their social security number just to at least make sure, well, geez, are they at least potentially alive or over 18? When this is some basic shit. If you worked at a company and you're involved in approving payments, setting up a payment system, and you didn't have this basic level of verification, and you'd knowingly allowed this to take place, I mean, you could be facing prison time. This is not an accident. This is some basic shit. It's almost like this was by design, but of course, that would never happen because that would just be fraud. And obviously, there's no fraud or waste in government. That would never happen. So it's just an accident that this somehow miraculously managed to be the case.
And also people with birth dates in the future.
What does that mean?
Well, in one, I think the birth date, I think in one case was like
Fetuses were getting
No,
loans.
not even. No, really, sort of you're talking about like your great grandchildren, like with the birth date, like of, I think it was like 2165. So more than a century from now was the birth date.
George Jetson was getting paid.
Yes, because your birthday is in the future, like the far future, not like next year.
Right.
And this is either fraudulent or we have your birthday wrong.
It's either a typo or someone stealing.
Which is it? Yes.
Right.
Yes. You should at least ask, which is it?
Do you guys feel you're getting justice and accountability?
One of the, I think, extreme examples of non-accountability in some cases has occurred at some of the small agencies. I think the Inter-American Foundation, IAF, is one of the agencies we visited where, they get $50 million a year, congressional money, to give grants. These are things like, alpaca farming in Peru, improving
That's a real example.
Yes, that's the real description. Improving the marketability of peas in Guatemala.
Really?
Fruit jam, and yes.
What?
And so you might expect, in the private sector, a nonprofit to give, 80 to 90% of their money to grantees. In the case of IAF, that was 58%. So the other half goes towards management, travel.
What we're to find exactly, to Ethan's example is that even if you agreed with supporting alpaca farmers in Peru, well, actually, most of the money never made it out of DC. Mm-hmm. It's going into the pockets of people in the neighborhood.
What?
So call me a little delusional, probably true, but would you not hope that if an organization was being provided tens and tens of millions of dollars to finance and enable something, whether or not you believe it's legitimate, by the way, shout out to my Peruvian friends, lived there for a couple of years, wouldn't you hope that the vast majority of the capital you were given would actually get to the alleged cause as opposed to lining the pockets of the people working at the organization? Just think about this for a moment. The government gives you a fuck ton of money, just drops a huge mountain of cash in your lap and says, you got to use that to help the alpaca farmers in Peru. And by the time the money arrives in the hands of the alpaca farmers in Peru, half of it's gone missing. It doesn't quite seem right.
I didn't even get to Peru.
Right. So what percentage do you think doesn't even get to the destination it's supposed to?
I believe the GAO estimate, so this is not our estimate, I believe it was on the order of only 10 to 15 cents on the dollar actually gets to the end recipient. Whether you
Wait, fucking what? 10 to 15%? If true, is it any wonder those who are currently receiving the other 85 to 90% of these funds are really mad at the Department of Government Efficiency for sniffing around and detecting this enormous waste? And we just heard these estimates weren't from the Department of Government Efficiency. It's not like they're talking their own book, right? Trying to make it sound as bad as possible. These are third-party estimates. I think Jesse Waters' face says it all. That's insane. Can you imagine that somebody sets up a GoFundMe for XYZ cause and the platform was taking 85 to 90% of the money as a fee and only passing on 10-15% to the end cause, people would be outraged.
Agree with that cause or not.
So they're just stealing the money before
Yes.
it even gets anywhere.
There's layers of stealing. So there's the first layer of stealing, second layer of stealing, third layer of stealing.
Subcontractor,
You start peeling the onion. Yeah,
subcontractor.
exactly. Contractor, subcontractor. It's like peeling an onion. And then maybe, and sometimes it's zero. Just flat. You get to the bottom of the onion. There's nothing there.
So maybe no one got a sex change in Guatemala.
It's possible that no one got a sex change in Guatemala.
I overheard a contractor tell one of her colleagues to falsify billable hours by creating a PowerPoint to mask a delay in the onboarding process in front of me. And this is like hour zero at this agency. And so, I mean, this is just a common theme that you take a look at these contracts, you take a look at these grants, and it's veiled in noble rhetoric. You know, it's at the top level. It
sounds good.
Yeah, it sounds amazing. And then you actually just follow what are the funds actually doing?
Or send us a picture.
Exactly. And
The send us a picture request is incredibly good. Like Pixar, it didn't happen. And then they're like, and it wouldn't be that hard to just, frankly, they could search for some fake pics on the internet or get AI to generate the pics, but they don't even bother doing that.
So you caught them cold billing fraud.
oh, I caught them, her advising her colleague to do this because it takes a few days to onboard. So that is being investigated right now.
Yeah, I mean, generally, like these programs, these grants are going to be like along the lines of save the baby pandas. And it's like, well, of course, who wouldn't want to save the baby pandas? And you know, in some cases, they've got a show panda, which they will trot out for special occasions. In a lot of cases, they don't even have a show panda.
No panda.
There's not even one panda, because we asked for pictures, and we don't even get one panda. And it's like, well, that's a lot of, you know, what does $1 billion get you? Does it not even get you one panda?
You really want to see a baby panda?
Yeah, like the Ebola money. We're like, okay, well, we agree with, like, we shouldn't have Ebola, you know. Where is the money going? Oh, it's going to Deloitte in DC. Like, what is an accounting firm doing with Ebola money?
What has been
I mean, that's a pretty fair and reasonable question.
the biggest resistance? Is there one agency, is there one department that when you guys walk in, they all start fighting you, start hiding
Wait, I thought
things?
you weren't going to talk.
I'm sorry.
I guess you can answer that question. Sure. I mean, let's. Yes, we've certainly had some battles.
Battles.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
who should talk about Yusuf?
Nate.
So before we get to this, just a quick example, right? If you got nothing to hide, okay, cool. There shouldn't really be a strong reaction if the Department of Government Efficiency just wants to look around and make sure there's nothing untoward happening, right? Nothing to hide? Okay, yep, yeah, sure, of course. Have a look at our systems. We'll open everything up. Here's this, blah, blah, blah. Seems reasonable. But if you do have something to hide, you're probably not going to be too happy about a bunch of gigantic brains who understand how to use their brains looking around, because they might discover what you've been up to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So Jesse, there's an agency, a small agency called the United States Institute of Peace. It was definitely the agency we had the most fight at. We actually went into the agency and found that they had.
That's actually kind of ironic. The United States Agency of Peace is the agency that they've probably had the most fights with. Irony, hello. Wow. Can't wait to hear more about this.
Had loaded guns inside of their headquarters. Institute for Peace.
I mean, any given company, any given organizational name is going to be the opposite of the title.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it was by far the least peaceful agency that we've worked with, ironically.
Of course.
Additionally, we found that they were spending money on things like private jets, and they even had a $130,000 contract with a former member of the Taliban. This is real. We don't encounter that at most agencies.
Yeah.
Wait, hold up. I just need a moment to process that. So, title, essentially, Agency of Peace, strangely loaded guns on site, and paying money to a known former member of the Taliban. Okay, seems legit. Nothing to see here.
Yeah.
What was the money going to the Taliban for?
So it was a contractor. They received $130,000 for generic services. And to Elon's point, there was not actually a clear description of what the contractor services were for. But
Was it for opium?
Unclear.
Or weapons?
Or
yeah,
nothing.
Or nothing.
or a bribe.
Or yeah, nothing.
And you naturally have to ask the question, well, how did we get here? Like when the country was founded, there were only 4 agencies. Today there are over 400. So there's been a 100x increase in the number of agencies since the founding of the nation. And thanks to President Trump, he's now signed 2 executive orders to start to reduce the number of agencies in the government, and the Institute of Peace was one of them, which is why our team went in to try and understand what was going on. And that's when we found all of the craziness, like the weapons in their armory. We found the payments to the Taliban.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So
They try to hide the evidence.
Right, so just a few hours after we got into their headquarters, we found that their chief accountant had actually deleted over 1 terabyte of accounting records from several years. So you'd have to ask the question, well, why would somebody do that? The DOGE team, fortunately, was able to recover that data with the help of a few great employees at the Institute of Peace. And I think the most troubling thing was they received $55 million a year from Congress, and any money that went unspent, instead of returning that to Congress, they would sweep it into a private bank account, which had no congressional oversight. And that's what they would use to fund things like events at their headquarters and the private jets. And so I think it's a great example because most Americans don't know what's going on at a lot of these smaller agencies. And this is, I think, the most extreme case of some of the wasteful spend that we're finding.
Bro, my head is spinning. So Agency of Peace, firearms on site, almost the instant the guys from the Department of Government Efficiency enter with their big balls swinging and their massive brains engaged and start looking around, somebody attempts to delete 1 terabyte of data to cover up evidence. By the way, probably such a small brain that they literally just put something in the trash and then press delete, not understanding how data writing on drives works. We're not going to get into the technical details, but just because you've emptied your trash doesn't mean it's gone. In fact, that never means it's gone. Why would you want to delete all this data unless you're covering something up? And of course, they recover the data and then discover that the money they're receiving year after year, whatever's not spent, is then swept into a private account with no oversight, and then they're spending it frivolously. I mean, is this real life? Like I said, if this was a movie, people would say, nah, that's too unbelievable. I mean, is it any wonder you've seen such an intense reaction to the Department of Government Efficiency? And if you're involved in this level of fraud, you're siphoning millions of dollars a year from US taxpayers to piss away on whatever you want, you too would probably be mad and probably have deep enough pockets, given all the fraud that's been going on, that you could fund some of these attacks and the slander and the lies and the misinformation trying to discredit the Department of Government Efficiency. No reasonable person who pays tax in the United States could possibly oppose what the Department of Government Efficiency is doing, which is looking for, discovering, exposing, reducing, and ending fraud, waste, misuse, and abuse of US taxpayer funds. No reasonable person could possibly oppose this. So you have to ask yourself the question, anytime you do see opposition to this, why? What possible reason would somebody or a particular organisation or outlet oppose the Department of Government Efficiency's work? What possible explanation could there be other than the fact that they're involved in the fraud, or somebody involved in the fraud's paid them to attack and discredit the Department of Government Efficiency? What other possible reason could there be?
So the agencies are hiding money from you. They're sending it to the Taliban. They have loaded weapons in the department buildings.
At the Institute of Peace.
At the Institute of Peace.
Yes.
That's right.
So this is a cover-up when you guys roll in.
This one, yes, a cover-up. Yes.
It's a cover-up.
They did delete a vast amount of financial information. That's really a definition of a cover-up.
Isn't that illegal to delete evidence?
Yes.
Shred documents?
It is. It's certainly illegal to delete accounting records that that Congress would certainly want to know where the congressionally appropriated funds are going from taxpayers.
When you catch them going Hillary style on their computers, do you refer this to the Department of Justice?
In this case, we did refer the evidence in the accounting example to the FBI and DOJ, and we were proud to do that. So yes, we did.
Resistance has shown up in some very surprising places. So for example, the famous fork in the road email, the deferred resignation program. So this was a program where you could resign from the government, collect pay and benefits for the next 8 months. Probably the most attractive separation program ever in human history. And the resistance actually came from the outside, with people saying this is a trick. And I heard somebody refer to it as an apple with a razor blade. And no, this was just a really juicy apple, caramel dipped apple. It was that good, but people were talked out of taking it. And now what started to happen is we did have about 80,000 people take it, and now those folks who did take it are on the beach, or they've moved on to a new job, and they're still getting paid. And so now we're starting to offer Fork 2 and Fork 3, where people can see that someone's eaten this apple and it was actually really tasty and good for them.
Is DOGE just getting started This is a long-term enterprise.
It's a long-term enterprise because if we take our eye off the ball, the waste and fraud will come roaring back.
They can doge when Democrats get back in power.
Yeah. Well, I think some of the things that, like, we're trying to have it be such that the funding is removed, so the grants are gone. So there's a lot of work required to restart the waste and fraud, and that will at least slow it down.
So outrageous and unbelievable, yet it's actually real. You got to commend the guys in DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency, Elon Musk, the whole team. They've been attacked relentlessly by the left-leaning media, many of the recipients of this fraud and waste, but they're doing what's right, something that no reasonable person can oppose, but all of the fraudsters are probably not happy about. Musk's final point there, worth emphasising that this is kind of like, let's go back to Peru. I spent a little bit of time in the jungle in the Amazon, living in a thatched hut. And I can tell you for a fact, a couple of days without maintenance and the jungle creeps back in. Plants, vines, animals, spot everything. It's kind of like the fraud. Unless there's constant maintenance, the swamp creatures, their tendrils will find their way back into Washington, back into contracts they shouldn't have, overpayments, fraud and waste. It's got to be an ongoing effort. And I think the logical conclusion here is that the Department of Government Efficiency should cut as much and as deeply as they possibly can to at least buy a little bit more runway before things get back to where they were. This shit is unreal. But there's two big upsides, not only the reduction of a lot of this fraud and waste, but the exposure of just about everyone who's involved. The more people shriek, the louder they are, the stronger the opposition to the work of the Department of Government Efficiency, the more extremely obvious it is that you're hearing from somebody who's either directly involved in the fraud, either a recipient, perpetrator, or both, or who's working as an appendage of somebody involved in the fraud, being paid off to oppose the work of the Department of Government Efficiency to keep the gravy train running at full speed. That's a big upside. People exposing themselves, just outing themselves left, right, and centre. Hey, look at me, I'm a fraudster, or a fraudster's paying me to try and stop this. Hey, look at me over here, yep. I'm shrieking about the Department of Government Efficiency. There's only one reason I'd be doing that. Look at me. Exposed.
Elon Musk shows primetime the cave, the money faucet, and the Stone Age phones. Right back. We're back, part two. The exclusive interview with Elon Musk and the DOGE boys. They took us inside the caves of bureaucracy. Watch this. We heard about a cave. We had federal workers working in a cave.
That's me.
Yeah.
Are they still?
Joe's actually been to the cave. Do you want to tell us about your cave? Your caving.
By the way, just a quick bit of context. This is Joe Gebbia, formerly one of the co-founders of Airbnb, currently on Tesla's board of directors, and clearly an absolute fucking G, volunteering his time, a great personal risk to try and have a massive impact. Credit to Joe here. I mean, the guy's a multi-billionaire, doesn't need to be doing this. In fact, no one in the room needs to be doing this. But just a little bit of context.
I wouldn't mind
You're spelunking.
So I've been helping out with retirement. And a few weeks ago, I had a chance to go to the mine. And so I took a golf cart through security down into the side of a mountain and entered, daylight left, and I entered this whole space of caverns and roads. And we get to a metal door, and I open it up. And there in front of me is a sea of filing cabinets from the 1960s. And I'm walking around, it's super chilly, smells like paper. And, I realize as a mine, it's a great mine. It's secure, it's well lit, temperature controlled. And so the question we're asking is not, is this a good place to store physical media, which it is. It's amazing for that. The question is, why are we still using paper in 2025? So I brought something to show you of what's inside the mine.
And normally, the normal process for retirement it'll be over 6 months. So once you file your retirement papers, that's why it takes 6 months.
What is that?
So these are replica case folders that people use to retire from the government. And so these are all compiled by hand, moved around on carts through the mine. It takes many months to do that. And this one is a single retiree's paper required to leave the government.
So if somebody wants to retire, they can't because it takes 6 months to compile the paper and carry the paper into a mine where it is stored. And also all the calculations are done by hand.
Everything has
in
to be
2025.
Reconciled, adjudicated. This is thicker than the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Yeah.
Is this real fucking life? I said before, if this were a film, people would say it was too unbelievable. It's 25. The process of retiring a government employee takes 6 goddamn months. A pile of paper thicker than somebody who thought Kamala Harris was a reasonable presidential candidate, stored in a literal mine underground and reconciled manually. Bro, is this real life?
And if I had to process this, I would rather do my taxes in the dark than have to go through this.
Yeah.
And so what we're doing is we're bringing this process online with modern software. And I'm excited to share that as of tonight, we have 25 retirees going through an entirely online retirement process in the government for the very first time.
It sounds so simple.
Yes, and it's great collaboration with Retirement Services inside OPM. So this has always been their dream, and we're just here to help accelerate it.
That's a pretty fat stack. Was that Kissinger's?
Oh no, the record is almost several shopping carts.
There's a whole pallet for one retiree with 27 boxes of paper on it.
For one guy.
That's the record.
I've seen it with my own eyes.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly, and it also frees up people, because we shouldn't have over 1,000 people carrying paper into a mine. That is not a good use of people's lives. So there are many other things that they could do that would be far more productive than carrying paper into a mine.
If you were to say, we have iPhones, does the government have payphones? Like, how prehistoric is this technology?
Oh yes, it's very prehistoric.
It's very prehistoric.
It's like Flintstones.
It's Flintstone level stuff.
It's so prehistoric. Like dinosaurs would think this is, kind of old.
Okay.
That's how prehistoric it is.
Okay. So
basically the only thing living was a sponge. That's how prehistoric it was.
I'm losing it here. If you're not a science nerd, he's talking about some of the earliest forms of life on the planet. We're talking around 1 billion years ago.
Okay, so we're leaving the Stone Age and we're moving into the Golden Age.
Pre-Cambrian era is what we're talking about.
Okay. There was a story I heard about mules. There were mules delivering mail to the bottom of the Grand Canyon.
Which might not be a bad thing, actually.
You have the mule picture.
Yeah.
Picture, it doesn't exist.
Right. Yeah, but this is a case where actually it might not. I think. Do we agree with the mule, or should there be mules?
I think it can be modernized.
There's opportunity for improvement.
Yes. Right.
Okay.
Right. So yeah, I'm at the Postal Service. I think a lot of people don't realize that there's actually a law that says that the post office is supposed to have a balanced budget.
There is?
Yeah, there is.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, right.
Well, that's not working, is it?
No, it's not.
So they're breaking the law.
They're breaking the law.
Okay.
Basically, since 2007, almost every year since 2007, they've lost money. So you might ask, what happened in 2007? So there was
happened in 2007?
Yeah, there was additional regulation that went into place that essentially crippled them and put them down this not good path where they essentially are stuck in the past as well as bleeding money left and right. So it's great, and we appreciate that the postal employees are willing to go to the hardest parts in this country, but we think that we can modernize it and help them become profitable.
Interesting example there of strangulation by regulation. A bunch of new regulations come in. US Postal Service loses money every year since.
Right now, last year they lost $9.5 billion.
Wow.
Yeah.
Serious money.
We finally meet Big Balls. Up next. Part 3. Here's the interview with Elon Musk and the rest of the DOGE crew. We finally asked the one question on our mind. Who's Big Balls?
It's me.
That should be obvious.
Why do they call you Big Balls?
I just said it as my LinkedIn username.
Okay.
Well, people on LinkedIn take themselves super seriously, and they're pretty adverse to risk. And I was like, well, I want to be neither of those things. So I said it, and honestly, I didn't even think anyone would notice.
Yeah.
So what do you
LinkedIn
do?
is so cringe.
What does Big Balls do?
Right now, I'm working on some payment computer stuff. So one of our initiatives is to root out fraud and waste. And to do that, we started looking at the payment computers. And as mentioned earlier, there is no accounting of what payments actually go to in the payment computer. So you look at a specific line item, $20 million. you're like, okay, well, what is this money going to? And for the majority of payment systems, it's like, well, we don't really know. And
yeah, they're like, what? That would be the response.
Is this the most basic responses?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the most common response.
What do you say when people just say, I don't know?
Well, it's a huge cause for concern because like the upstream thing, which is distributing the money, literally has no checks and no accountability to the actual American taxpayer. So it's a huge vector for fraud, waste, and abuse.
Do these people not respect taxpayer money?
I mean, there's no incentive to if you work in the government. I think the incentives will always decide the outcomes.
Yes.
Do you guys feel like you're putting yourself at risk by doing this because you're stirring up so much hostility by these people ripping us off?
100%. Well, we don't need to speculate about that. You can see online in the protests that they make that very clear. I mean, I've been hanged in effigy many times, and there have been people that have actively advocated at these violent protests for my death, and also advocated for the death of the people at DOGE.
I think the young folks of us have gotten hate mail, threats from reporters and the public alike. I think, speaking for myself, I dropped out of Harvard and came here to serve my country. And it's been unfortunate to see lost friendships. Most of campus hates me now. But I think fundamentally, I hope people realize through conversations like this that reform is genuinely needed. And if there's one, I think this is important to say, if there's one group of people who really have a shot of success, it's the people here. They're up until 2 a.m. Monday through Sunday. DOGE does not recognize.
So I guess it turns out that every member of DOGE is probably accurately referred to as big balls. Talk about courage. Massive personal risk. Lost friendships, although they weren't really your friends. Just trying to do the right thing. And as Musk points out, these crazy, psychopathic, violent protesters speaking out against DOGE, wishing death upon Elon Musk and the members of... the only reason I can imagine somebody would do that, other than being extremely mentally ill and easily propagandized by the hate stream media, is if they're in on the grift and the fraud.
We're working all the time.
What inspired you to drop out of Harvard to do this?
There's a lot of reform that's needed. I think the value of this and the impact here is so much more vast than anything you could learn in a classroom doing computer science.
And you guys are sleeping here, I'm hearing. You guys are up all night. You have this meeting at 10 o'clock every Wednesday?
We'll probably go back to work right after this.
Yeah.
You're going back to work after this?
Yes.
Right.
It's almost 11 o'clock.
So that's early. That's early.
It's early? Can I go to bed? It's an incredible work ethic. You guys should be really, really proud of yourself. Do good people come up to you and say thank you for doing what you're doing?
Absolutely. There are people in the State Department that will stop you, or all of the agencies that we've been to, that'll stop you in the hallways or write emails and say, I was scared to write this, or I don't know if you're interested in this. But they usually have great ideas. And if they often have the best ideas because they've worked in the places and they've been stifled by the bureaucracy for so many years. So one of the great things that, at least in my experience, and we listen to them and empower them.
So yes, in fact, I'd like to emphasize that because we'd like to just give a big thank you to all the government employees who are helping reduce the waste and fraud, because this is, we really couldn't do it without you. So
it's a group effort.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm not trying to sort of say all government employees are bad. That's absolutely not the case. It's just that, there actually just does need to be a serious effort to reduce the waste and fraud. And we're just making that happen. And a lot of people in the government are very glad to see it happen.
I think it's really important to recognize every single person around this table that's embedded within an agency is supporting that agency, whether they're working on systems or working through people. We are encountering droves of government employees who are missionaries, not mercenaries, who are actually here serving because they believe in what they're doing and they want to do things well. We are trying to empower them, and they feel empowered now to ask the question of why? Why aren't we doing this? What else can we be doing? How can we fix this? And I think agency by agency, it is filled with exceptional government employees, right? And when we give them the tools, when we give them the systems, and we leave behind systems to help them do their jobs better, that's the permanent change, right? And they're embracing that, not because it's new to them, it's because it's something they've always wanted to do. But for the first time ever, we're giving them the tools and the collaboration to be able to do that.
It's a very important message. Yeah. That message needs to get out a lot more. I'm so glad you said that.
We have exceptional people at all of our agencies. Exceptional. I mean, they do a thankless job and they work incredibly hard.
I love to hear how collaborative it is with these people in these agencies, and it's not all conflict. Sometimes in the media, you always hear about conflict, and you guys are considered these ruthless suits that come in and scare people. But
conflict is the exception.
There is conflict, but that is the exception. It's actually true of history in general. People study the wars a lot, but actually most of the time there wasn't war.
It's just not as exciting.
It's just not as exciting.
Right.
Exactly.
Well, for the TV guys, we like conflict, but in this case, we love the collaboration. So thank you guys. Thanks for allowing me this access in here. You guys are just really, really bright, young, smart patriots. And you have a great team. And thank you, Elon, for everything you've done for the country. We really appreciate it. We're eternally grateful.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Awesome stuff. Next level transparency. And of course, if the mainstream media in general was reasonable, they'd certainly be covering this everywhere today. The DOGE team, one of the main things that Orange Man Bad, who won the presidential election, campaigned on the popular vote, the swing states, swept them all, is DOGE. And we hear in their own words the work they're doing, some of the fraud they've discovered, some of the major problems, the loopholes, some of the waste and abuse and fraud they've stopped, why they're doing what they're doing. You would imagine if the media was reasonable that they'd be covering this in great detail, right? But I have a funny feeling the only place you're going to hear about this is on Fox and a few of the right-leaning outlets, and that's it. Even though there's nothing partisan about saving US taxpayers billions and billions, actually hundreds of billions of dollars. Imagine another administration prior to now, on the left or the right, being this transparent to invite a news organisation into a meeting. You'd never hear of it. Yet the narrative right now in the HJ media is there's no transparency. They're not telling us what they're doing. Rah, 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 rah. Unbelievable stuff. And I still, holy fuck, dude, I'm still in disbelief at some of the fraud that was occurring and some of the oversights that enabled such massive levels of fraud. It's just unbelievable. Want more content? Early access? A bunch of perks? Click the links in the pinned comment. AG1 is awesome. I've been taking it daily now for more than 3 years. It's a great way to fill in nutritional gaps. It's packed full of vitamins, minerals, and whole food source nutrients, plus has prebiotics, probiotics, and adaptogens to improve gut health, regularity, and help your body handle stress. I'm always looking for an edge to help me feel and perform my best, which is why I haven't missed a day of AG1 for more than 3 years. Just try it and see how you feel. Click the link in the pinned comment or head to drinkag1.com/SMR and get yourself a free 1-year supply of vitamin D3 plus K2 and 5 travel packs.